all spiritual pathways and practices proceed from the many to the one. From multiplicity and diversity to unity. From the way reality appears to be to what reality actually is. When we first look at our experience, we first see thoughts, images, feelings, memories, sensations, perceptions, and so on. We proceed from there to the one infinite and indivisible reality, infinite, aware being. And all the pathways and practices in all the great religious and spiritual traditions elaborate this pathway from the many to the one, from the appearance to its reality, from multiplicity and diversity to unity. For some, this pathway may take just a few days or weeks. For others, 2 or 3 or 4 decades, depending on the maturity of the individual and the clarity and efficiency of the teaching. But sooner or later, all pathways and practices are destined to arrive at the one infinite and indivisible reality, which cannot legitimately be named, but we might refer to as consciousness, spirit, love, and so on. And at some point, there is this great recognition. There is only the one. The one cannot know or perceive anything. Because in order to experience anything, one must stand apart from that thing as a separate knower of the known. It is for this reason, for instance, that through our eyes we can perceive a tree, because our eyes, the instrument through which we perceive, stands at a distance from the tree in subject-object relationship. But the eyes cannot perceive themselves because they cannot stand apart from themselves. In fact, the eyes are the only things that the eyes cannot see, because they cannot separate themselves from themselves. It's the same with the one. from the perspective of the One, there is just the One. It cannot separate itself from itself in order to know or perceive itself objectively. This does not mean that the One does not know itself. It means that the One does not know itself in subject-object relationship. It knows itself simply by being itself. It knows the world by being the world. But it cannot perceive the world by itself. In order to perceive the world, it must overlook its oneness. It must consent to limit itself, to localize itself. To contract itself into a temporary finite point of view, a separate subject of experience, from whose perspective it is able to perceive itself as the world. That's what each of us, as apparently separate selves, are. An apparent contraction of the One, an apparent localization of the One. An apparently separate subject of experience, from whose perspective the One appears as the many. But this contraction of itself into a localized point of view or finite mind comes at a price. It overlooks the knowledge, the One overlooks the knowing of its own being as it essentially is. In the form of a finite mind, it cannot know itself as it essentially is. Because the finite mind imposes its own limitations on everything that it knows or perceives. So through the finite mind, that is through the faculties of thinking and perceiving, we cannot know or perceive reality as it is. And yet everything that we know or perceive is that reality. However hard we look, and through whatever instruments, telescopes or microscopes or whatever instruments through which we look at the world, we can never perceive reality as it is through those instruments. Because the instrument itself imposes multiplicity and diversity on the oneness of reality. If the limitations of the instrument were to completely dissolve, then the appearance of reality would dissolve with it. It's what William Blake meant when he said, when the doors of perception are cleansed, everything will appear as it really is, infinite. That is, there will no longer be the appearance of things, because things are finite. When the doors of perception, when our perceiving faculties are cleansed of their limitations, reality will no longer appear as things. There will just be the one infinite, indivisible and invisible reality. So in order to know reality as it is, we must remove from it everything that the finite mind imposes on it. So think now of your experience of the world. But remove from that experience everything that your own individual mind imposes on that experience. First of all, remove thinking. Then remove seeing. Then remove hearing. Then remove tasting. These are all faculties of the mind. Then remove smelling. Then remove sensing or touching. What remains of the world when thinking, seeing, hearing, touching, tasting and smelling are removed from it? In other words, when the doors of perception are cleansed. All that remains is the infinite. That was all that was there to begin with, colored by perception, appearing as many, but always only itself, the infinite, the one. Once we have arrived at the one, we should make the resolution once and for all to stay there. Never to allow appearances to veil their reality again. To know only that. To be only that. To love only that. As Meister Eckhart said, when I am able to establish myself in nothing, and nothing in myself, uprooting and casting out what is in me, then I can pass into the naked being of God, which is the naked being of the Spirit. We are not human beings, we are infinite being, God's being, clothed in human experience. The one infinite, indivisible whole or reality, from whose perspective there is no inside or outside, no self or other, no mind or matter, no self or world or separate God. Just the one infinite and indivisible reality, perfect, complete, lacking nothing, resisting nothing, needing nothing, knowing nothing. Start every day with an affirmation. There is only one. I am that. You are that. Everyone and everything is that. Make this single, simple, easy, obvious understanding the sole guiding principle of your life. Make your life an expression and celebration of that.